A wealthy entrepreneur, late for a meeting, came across a homeless woman with a newborn in her arms, under pouring rain. Without thinking twice, he handed her the keys to his home and, once he returned, he entered without knocking, surprised by what he saw. It was a gloomy and dark morning, and Marco, a successful entrepreneur, was racing against time. He had a crucial meeting that could determine the future of his business. Dressed in an elegant suit and carrying a leather briefcase, he advanced quickly through the crowd, dodging the puddles created by the incessant rain. Turning the corner, something caught his attention. Under an awning, huddled and soaked, was a woman in worn clothes clutching a newborn. The baby was crying, his sobs blending with the sound of the rain and passing cars. The woman, pale and with tired eyes, was trying to shield the baby from the cold drops falling from the canopy. Marco stopped, torn between the urgency of the meeting and the scene before him. He wanted to continue, but something in his heart made him hesitate. He approached the woman, his gaze passing from the baby to her face. "Do you need help?" he asked, his voice barely audible above the din of the rain. The woman looked at him, with an expression mixing desperation and hope. Without waiting for an answer, Marco pulled his house keys from his pocket and handed them to her. "Take them. It's nearby. Use them until the rain stops." He quickly explained how to reach his apartment and, without another word, started running again, almost forgetting about the meeting. The meeting, as expected, was tense. Marco was physically present, but his mind kept returning to that woman and the baby. He wondered if it had been wise to leave his house keys with a stranger. After long hours of negotiations, he finally freed himself. With the meeting concluded and the day drawing to a close, Marco decided to return home. He was exhausted from the day and couldn't wait to relax at home. Arriving at his building, he quickly climbed the stairs, feeling the fatigue in every step. In front of his apartment door, he hesitated a moment before inserting the key in the lock. The scene that presented itself before him left him speechless. The apartment, usually neat and clean, had a different air. The woman he had helped was standing, cradling the baby who now slept peacefully. A smell of freshly cooked food pervaded the air, coming from the kitchen. She had prepared soup and the table was set in a simple but welcoming way. When the woman heard the door open, she turned, meeting his gaze. Marco noticed she was wearing one of his shirts, which hung loosely on her slender body. In the apartment there was a quietness he hadn't felt in a long time. "Good evening, sir," she said with a kind tone. "I didn't know how to thank you, so I thought I'd do something for you. I hope it's not a problem." Marco blinked, still surprised by the scene in front of him. He shook his head, allowing an involuntary smile to surface. "No, absolutely not," he replied. "You did much more than I expected. And the baby, how is he?" "Much better," she replied, gently stroking the baby's head. "Thank you from my heart for helping us. My name is Sarah." Marco approached, feeling a mixture of emotions he couldn't decipher. He didn't know this woman, but a feeling told him that that impulsive gesture of the morning would have an important impact on his life. He sat at the table, accepting the bowl of soup Sarah had prepared for him. The warmth and aroma of the food seemed to fill not only his stomach, but also his heart. And so, on that rainy night, surrounded by unexpected warmth in his own home, Marco began to realize that sometimes the most unexpected encounters can lead to profound changes. With the delicate sound of rain beating against the windows, he sensed that this night marked the beginning of something much bigger. The next morning, Marco woke up enveloped by the aroma of fresh coffee in the air. He blinked, confused for a moment, before remembering the events of the day before. He got up and followed the scent to the kitchen, where he found Sarah standing, with the baby arranged in an improvised sling. She smiled as she stirred something in a pot on the stove. "Good morning, Mr. Marco," she said, noticing his presence. "I made coffee and toast. I hope you're hungry." Marco smiled, surprised by the sense of tranquility that scene evoked in him. "Good morning, Sarah. Please, just call me Marco." He approached the table and sat down, accepting the cup of coffee she offered him. "How are you?" And the baby? We're fine thanks to you, she replied, taking a seat at the table next to him. I don't know how I could ever thank you for all this. Marco shook his head, sipping the hot coffee. There's no need to thank. During the day, Marco made some phone calls and managed to find a small apartment for Sarah and Leo, as well as a job at one of the companies he collaborated with. When he returned home, he shared the news with Sarah, who was radiant. In the following days, Sarah settled into the new apartment. Marco helped her with the move and made sure she lacked nothing. Over time, a true friendship began to grow between them. Marco visited Sarah and Leo whenever he could, bringing small gifts and appreciating their company. One evening, after a long day at work, Marco went to visit Sarah at her apartment. She welcomed him with a warm smile, and Leo babbled happily seeing him. They sat on the couch and Sarah began telling him about her day at the new job. It's fantastic, Marco. I feel like I'm rebuilding my life. I don't know how to thank you for all this. Marco took her hand, feeling an increasingly deep connection. Seeing you and Leo happy is all I need. The conversation flowed naturally, and time passed quickly. When Marco was about to leave, Sarah hesitated for a moment, then said, Marco, you've changed our lives in a way I never imagined. I just wanted to tell you that you're an incredible person. He smiled, touched by her words. And you're an extraordinary woman, Sarah. I'm happy to have helped you, but even happier to have met you. Sarah lowered her gaze, a slight blush on her cheeks. Me too, Marco. Leaving the apartment, Marco realized that something was changing inside him. He felt more complete, more connected to life in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. As he walked home, he understood that this story was only at the beginning and that Sarah and Leo had become a fundamental part of his life. The rain continued to fall gently, but now it seemed more like a relaxing melody than a nuisance. He looked at the sky and smiled, feeling that big changes were coming. As the months passed, the friendship between Marco and Sarah strengthened. Sarah thrived at her new job, and Leo, now a bit older, was beginning to show the first traits of his lively and curious character. Marco, meanwhile, found a new purpose in helping and being close to Sarah and Leo. On a sunny afternoon, Marco invited Sarah and Leo for a walk in the park. They met at the park entrance and began walking together, enjoying the lush greenery and the sound of children playing. Marco carried a picnic basket, while Leo, sitting in the stroller, observed everything with eyes full of curiosity. They found a large tree under which to stop, and Marco spread a blanket, starting to pull sandwiches, fruit and drinks from the basket. Sarah, struck by his kindness, helped him organize the lunch. Marco, you always have fantastic ideas, she said smiling. Leo likes being outdoors. It's nice to get out and relax a bit. We all deserve it, Marco replied, casting an affectionate glance at the baby. As they ate and chatted, Marco and Sarah began confiding more and more about their lives. Marco told about his childhood and how he had worked hard to build his company. Sarah shared details of her past, talking about the difficulties faced and her desire to offer Leo a better life. After the picnic, they decided to take another walk in the park. Leo was fascinated by the ducks in the lake and laughed with joy at their every movement. Marco, observing the scene, felt a warm sensation in his chest. It was as if he was discovering a new kind of happiness. Sarah, have you ever thought about going back to school? Marco asked suddenly while watching Leo. Sarah stared at him, surprised. Actually, I have thought about it, yes. But between work and Leo, it's difficult. I could help you, Marco said, resolute. We can find a way to make everything work together. You deserve every opportunity. Sarah was deeply touched by the offer, but hesitated. Marco, You'll never be a burden, Sarah, Marco replied with determination. I want to see you realize your dreams, just as you're helping me rediscover mine. They continued walking, talking about future plans. Sarah began to feel more hopeful, seeing a clear path toward her goals. Marco was determined to help her every step of the way. A few weeks later, Marco found a scholarship program that seemed perfect for Sarah. He encouraged her to apply, promising to take care of Leo whenever necessary to allow her to study. Sarah, initially hesitant, eventually accepted. During that period, Marco and Sarah began seeing each other almost every day. He became a father figure to Leo, and the bond between the three became stronger and more affectionate. Marco was beginning to realize that his feelings for Sarah went beyond friendship. However, he hesitated to reveal them, fearing it would complicate things. On a serene night, while Sarah was studying and Leo was sleeping, Marco decided to visit her at her apartment. He brought a bouquet of flowers with him, determined to finally open his heart. When he arrived, he found Sarah immersed in her books, with a concentrated expression. "Marco!" she exclaimed, surprised to see him. "What are you doing here so late?" He smiled and handed her the flowers. "I wanted to see you and tell you something important." Sarah took the bouquet, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Thank you, they're beautiful. What did you want to tell me?" Marco took a deep breath, gathering courage. "Sarah, since I met you, my life has changed in a way I never imagined. You and Leo have brought joy and a sense of purpose I didn't think I could feel again. I don't want to spend another day without you by my side." He knelt down, taking her hand gently. "Will you marry me?" Sarah remained silent, her eyes shining with intense emotions. After a moment that seemed eternal, she approached and took Marco's hand. "Marco, you've been my guardian angel. I don't know what I would have done without you," she said. "I also feel something very special for you." They embraced, feeling that their bond was strengthening even more. Marco knew that, whatever challenge presented itself, he was ready to stand by Sarah and Leo's side, building a future together. And so, under the stars of that quiet night, they took the first step toward a new chapter of their lives, rich with love, hope, and new possibilities. The months that followed brought a new phase for Marco, Sarah, and Leo. Marco and Sarah worked together to build a solid relationship, trying to balance the responsibilities of work, study, and caring for Leo. Marco, who had always considered himself a man devoted only to work, now found new joy in his family. Sarah, for her part, was progressing in her studies. With Marco's support, she managed to enroll in a university course she had always dreamed of and, despite the difficulties of reconciling the role of mother and student, she was getting excellent results. With each new achievement, she felt she was getting closer to the dream of offering Leo a better life. On a Saturday morning, Marco proposed spending the day at his family's country house, a place he hadn't visited in many years. It was a large property, surrounded by trees and with a quiet lake. Marco remembered the summers spent there as a child and thought it would be the ideal place for a day of peace. When they arrived at the country house, Sarah and Leo were fascinated. The place was enchanting, with a rustic and welcoming atmosphere. While Sarah explored the interior of the house, Leo ran on the lawn, laughing and playing. "This place is incredible, Marco," Sarah exclaimed, her eyes full of happiness. "I can't believe you have a place like this." Marco smiled, observing her. "I'm glad you like it. I hadn't been here in a long time. I wanted to share it with you." They spent the day together, enjoying the tranquility and natural beauty of the place. Marco and Sarah walked along the lake, with Leo following them, curious about everything he saw. They had a picnic on the shore, where Marco improvised a barbecue. Sarah laughed seeing him struggle with the grill, something he clearly wasn't used to doing. "You're a real chef," she joked, while Marco struggled to flip a piece of meat. "I'm trying," he replied, laughing, "but I think I'll need some lessons to improve." After lunch, they lay down on the grass, watching the clouds in the clear sky. Marco felt a peace he hadn't felt in years, while holding Sarah's hand and listening to Leo's laughter. "Sarah, I never imagined a day could be so perfect," he said, turning toward her. "You've given new meaning to my life." Sarah smiled, squeezing his hand. "We're very happy too, Marco. You've changed our lives in a way I never imagined." When the sun began to set, painting the sky with orange and pink hues, they returned to the country house. Marco lit the fireplace, and everyone gathered in the living room, warming themselves by the fire. Leo fell asleep in Sarah's arms, and Marco observed the scene with tenderness. "I was thinking about something," Marco said, breaking the silence. How about you move in with me? I'd like us to be together, like a real family. Sarah looked at him surprised. Marco, that would be wonderful. But are you sure? I don't want to invade your space. It's not an invasion, he replied. I want to wake up every day next to you and watch Leo grow. I want us to be a family. Sarah's eyes filled with tears of joy. I want that too, Marco, with all my heart. And so they decided to take the big step. In the following weeks, Sarah and Leo began moving into Marco's house. The process was exciting, enriched by small celebrations. Marco took care to prepare a special room for Leo, decorated with his favorite themes. Sarah, for her part, added a welcoming touch to Marco's house, making it more comfortable and full of warmth. Finally, the day of the definitive move arrived. Marco, Sarah, and Leo gathered in the living room, surrounded by boxes and suitcases. Leo, enthusiastic, ran back and forth, exploring his new home. I'd say it's official now, Marco said, smiling. Welcome to our home. Sarah hugged him, feeling truly at home. Thank you, Marco, for everything. This is just the beginning of a new life for all of us. As night fell, they settled on the couch, enjoying each other's company. The future looked bright and full of opportunities. Marco knew that, whatever happened, they would face it together, as a real family. Life had offered Marco and Sarah a second chance, and they were determined to enjoy every moment. Love and hope filled the house, and, with Leo by their side, they felt they could overcome any challenge. Days became weeks, and weeks became months. Marco, Sarah, and Leo became increasingly united, living like a real family. Daily life at home was now made of laughter, games, and moments of tenderness. Marco felt more fulfilled than he had ever imagined possible, and Sarah was growing both as a mother and in her studies. On a cool autumn morning, Marco woke up with an idea that filled him with enthusiasm. He had planned a special surprise for Sarah and Leo. He decided not to say anything, keeping the secret until the last moment. With the help of some friends, he organized every detail carefully. That evening, Marco invited Sarah and Leo to a special dinner. They got ready and Marco took them to an elegant restaurant in the heart of the city. Sarah, splendid in a dress Marco had given her, was radiant with happiness. Leo, on his best behavior, observed everything with curious eyes. The dinner was perfect. Exquisite food, welcoming atmosphere, and irreplaceable company. After the meal, Marco took Sarah and Leo to the restaurant's terrace, which offered a breathtaking view of the illuminated city. There's something I want to share with you, Marco said, taking Sarah's hand and holding Leo in his arms. This is a really special moment for me. Sarah looked at him, curious and slightly anxious. Marco took a deep breath, pulling out a small box from his pocket. He opened it, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. Sarah, since you entered my life, everything has changed for the better. You and Leo have brought joy, purpose, and love that I didn't think I could feel again. I don't want to spend another day without you by my side. He knelt down, taking her hand tenderly. Will you marry me? Sarah was speechless, her eyes filled with tears of happiness. She looked at Leo, who smiled innocently, and then looked back at Marco. Yes, Marco. Yes, I want to marry you, she replied, her voice broken with emotion. Marco slipped the ring on her finger, and they hugged while Leo applauded enthusiastically. The terrace, reserved only for them, exploded in applause from the few friends Marco had invited to celebrate that special moment. It was a magical night, full of love and promises for the future. The following months were dedicated to wedding preparations. Sarah was radiant, planning every detail carefully. Marco was involved in every phase of the process, wanting that day to be perfect for her. Leo, now grown and full of energy, was excited about the idea of seeing his mother and Marco get married. Finally, the big day arrived. The ceremony took place in the garden of Marco's country house, the place where they had lived many happy moments together. The garden was decorated with flowers of all colors, and a splendid white tent had been set up for the guests. Sarah walked down the aisle arm in arm with an old friend, wearing a simple but enchanting wedding dress. Her eyes were fixed on Marco, who awaited her at the altar, with Leo by his side as a page boy. Marco, in an elegant suit, felt his heart beat faster seeing Sarah approach. When she finally reached the altar, they exchanged vows written by themselves, expressing all the love and gratitude they felt for each other. The emotion was palpable, and all the guests were touched by the deep bond between the two. "I promise to love and support you in every moment, in joy and sorrow, in sickness and in health," Marco said, his voice steady but charged with emotion. We have a whole life ahead of us, full of love and adventures." Sarah smiled, feeling complete next to Marco. "Yes, Marco, this is just the beginning. I love you. I love you too, Sarah," he replied, holding her even tighter. Time passed, and the lives of Marco, Sarah, and Leo filled with happy moments and challenges faced together. Marco continued to thrive in his business, now with a renewed sense of purpose and balance. Sarah, for her part, was about to graduate with honors, a goal that just a few years earlier seemed an unattainable dream. On a spring morning, Sarah was getting ready for her graduation day. The elegant dress she wore reflected her growth journey, and her bright smile revealed the joy and pride she felt. Marco and Leo were enthusiastic, ready to celebrate this important achievement with her. The auditorium was full of family and friends, all eager to see their loved ones receive their diploma. Marco held Leo's hand, who swung his feet impatiently, waiting for the moment when he would see his mother go up on stage. Finally, Sarah's name was called. She went up on stage gracefully, receiving her diploma with tears in her eyes. Marco and Leo applauded standing up, and Marco felt a strong wave of pride and emotion seeing the woman he loved reach such an important milestone. After the ceremony, they met outside the auditorium. Sarah was surrounded by friends and professors, all intent on congratulating her. Marco and Leo approached, and she threw herself into Marco's arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "I did it, Marco," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I really did it." Marco held her tight, kissing her sweetly. "I knew you would make it, Sarah. You're incredible." Leo, with a bouquet of flowers almost bigger than him, ran to give it to his mother. "Mom, you're the best. I love you." Sarah knelt down to hug Leo, feeling the warmth of their love. "I love you too, my darling." They spent the rest of the day celebrating Sarah's graduation with a family lunch, followed by a small party at home, surrounded by friends and loved ones. The atmosphere was full of laughter, music, and love, reflecting the joy of that special moment. As the night wore on, the guests began to leave, leaving Marco, Sarah, and Leo alone. Sitting on the living room couch with the fireplace lit, they thought back to the journey that had brought them there. "Sarah, I couldn't be more proud of you," Marco said, looking into her eyes. "You've overcome so many obstacles and achieved incredible goals. You're an inspiration." Sarah smiled, squeezing his hand. "I couldn't have done it without you, Marco. You gave me strength when I needed it most." And she looked at Leo, who was almost asleep in her arms. "You're the reason for everything, my love." Marco kissed Sarah's forehead and then Leo's. "We're a family, and together we can overcome anything." Life continued to be generous with them. Sarah found a job in the field she had graduated in, while Marco managed to better balance his professional and personal life. Leo, always smiling and full of energy, continued to be the light of their lives. On a beautiful summer day, Marco decided to organize a surprise for the family. A trip to a paradise island, a place where they could relax and enjoy each other's company, away from the distractions of daily life. When they arrived on the island, they were greeted by a breathtaking view. The sea of an intense blue and white sand beaches. Marco had planned every detail to make the experience unforgettable. They stayed in a bungalow on the beach, where they could hear the relaxing sound of waves gently breaking. In the following days, they explored the island, swam in the crystal-clear waters, and hiked along tropical trails. Leo loved building sandcastles and playing in the water, while Marco and Sarah enjoyed the peace and serenity of the place. On a special night, as the sun set on the horizon, Marco and Sarah decided to take a walk on the beach. Leo was exhausted after a day of playing and was already asleep in the bungalow. They walked hand in hand, feeling the sand under their feet and the light wind on their faces. "Marco, I don't know how to thank you for all this," Sarah said, looking at him with love. "This trip, this life, you made everything possible." Marco stopped and wrapped her in an embrace. "There's no need to thank me, Sarah. I'd do it all over again. You and Leo are my family, my reason for living." They kissed under the starry sky, feeling they were exactly where they should be. Life continued to offer challenges and surprises, but together they knew they could face anything. Returning to the bungalow, they found Leo sleeping deeply. They lay down next to him, surrounding him with their love. Marco, Sarah, and Leo were ready to continue their journey, knowing the future was bright and full of promise. And so, with the sound of waves lulling their dreams, the little family fell asleep, grateful for every moment spent together. Love had united them and would guide them forever, in every step of the path that awaited them.